This is my Triumph Bonneville. I like everything about this bike except for its lack of wind protection. The retro naked bike styling means it looks really cool, but at high speeds it's just a bit too... What this bike could really use is a windshield to deflect some of that wind elsewhere. I could buy an aftermarket one. There's some pretty affordable bespoke and universal options, and even the expensive ones are really not that expensive in the grand scheme of motorcycle accessories. Normally, I'd DIY a part like this to get it cheaper, but with these prices, I'm not even sure that's possible. So instead, I'm just going to DIY this part because it's more fun. I'm starting out with a 3mm thick sheet of polycarbonate. This is also commonly known by the brand name Lexan, but that's not the brand I'm using here. Polycarbonate is orders of magnitude more impact resistant than glass, and it's much easier to work with. The material is clear, but it's covered in a white protective film that I won't peel off until the very end. With a ruler and a Sharpie, I'm just roughing out a shape that I think will have nice proportions and look good on my bike. I'm taking heavy inspiration from the aftermarket windshields I chose not to buy. Sorry, the economy. Once I have a general shape I like, I'm rounding all the corners to the radius of a spray paint lid for the sake of aesthetics. Once I'm sure I like the shape, I can cut it out with a rotary tool. In my limited experience with polycarbonate, I've found that it's best to melt through it with an abrasive cutoff wheel, as opposed to cutting it with a saw. This leaves behind blobs of melted plastic around the edges, but they snap off very easy with a razor blade, or can even just be pulled off by hand. For some of the more difficult corners, I just use a belt sander. The shape is looking good, but obviously I can't just put a completely flat windshield on the bike. It needs to be curved. For this, I did have to go out and buy a highly specialized tool. This is a bucket.
Dear God.
There's more.
No.
I'm using ratchet straps to bend the polycarbonate around the bucket and a heat gun to persuade it to keep that shape. With a bit of trial and error, I found that about 170 degrees Celsius is enough for the material to bend, but not enough for it to melt. There are one or two spots where I think I used too much heat, but I won't know if that caused any problems until I take the protective film off. After 3 or so generous passes with a heat gun and a cooling off period, the piece now has a perfect curve to it. So in the interest of being transparent with my mistakes, I do think I overheated it just a bit. I don't know if it comes across at all on camera, but right here, I think I got it too hot and it kind of made a flat spot. It's not an even curve there. I think it's too late for me to do anything about it at that point, but that's a lesson learned. There is such a thing as too much heat. Other than that, I'm super happy with this curvature. With the shape of the windshield figured out, I can now start working out how I'm going to mount it to the bike. Fair warning, there's a lot of eyeballing and winging it coming up. If you were hoping for accurate measurements and detailed schematics, you're watching the wrong channel. You should have figured that out during the Team Fortress 2 reference. I'm starting out with a piece of 1-inch steel flat bar. My plan is to mount one side to the headlight mounting bolts and the other side to the windshield. Since these two things are perpendicular to one another, I'm heating up the steel and putting a twist in a few inches from the bottom. Right now I'm just twisting to 90 degrees and I'll fine-tune the angle later. After cutting each piece down to 14 inches and drilling a hole in the bottom of each for the headlight bolt to go through, I'm left with pieces that look like this. I mount the two brackets to the bike and tweak the angle of the twist until the windshield fits flat against both pieces. To prevent the twist in the metal from interfering with the windshield, I put a slight rearward bend in the mounting bracket. Now the shield can be mounted on the bracket in any orientation without risk of it hitting the twist. After replicating that bend in the other bracket, these are the two mounting brackets I'm left with. I then eyeball how I want the windshield to sit on the brackets and drill a couple holes so I can test fit everything on the bike. Now, obviously mounting the screen to the bike with just 2 points of contact won't work. As soon as the wind hits this, it's just going to want to rotate backwards until it's leaning against the speedometer. I anticipated this. The brackets we just made are simply to mount the shield to the bike. To reinforce it against the wind, we're going to add a pair of braces that will form a triangle and prevent the shield from being pushed back. On the Bonneville, there's not really a good spot to brace to, so I'm going to use the handlebars. That's where these come in. This is a pair of universal mirror mounts. They're just a bar clamp with a threaded hole in them, perfect for what I need. I find a spot on the bars to mount them where they point somewhat at the higher part of the shield's mounting bracket, and then drill a hole through that spot on the mounting bracket. The plan is to have this 5/16 steel rod connect the two together. Using an M8 by 125 die, I cut threads into the end of the steel rod so that it can screw into the mirror mount. Since it's not a perfectly straight line between the mirror mount and the bracket, I eyeball a bend for the rod that will make it as close to perpendicular with the mounting bracket as possible when screwed into the mirror mount. This is the most eyeballed guesswork part of the project. I'd love to tell you how to take measurements and figure out the exact angle, but if I tried to do the math, I'd probably black out. Here's another TF2 reference.
Kill me.
After marking a good length, I cut the brace down to size and thread the other end. This is what the finished brace looks like, and this is the identical one I made for the other side. If you want to see how I made this one, just rewind the video. At this point, all of the individual parts are made, and we can test fit everything on the bike. Now that I'm satisfied that this all fits together and doesn't have any gaping design flaws, I can take it all apart and clean everything up. First, I'm rounding off both ends of the mounting brackets, deburring the holes, and removing the old price stickers. The braces don't need much, just some plier scratches brushed out. Once all 4 metal parts are looking good, I give them a coat of black primer, followed by some gloss black spray paint. While I'm waiting for the paint to dry, I turn my attention to the windshield itself. The edges are still fairly rough from being cut out, so I'm cleaning them up with sandpaper. I start with 200 grit and work my way up to 400. I'm not trying to give them a perfect polished finish, I just want them to be smooth and not look hand-cut. Once the paint on the mounting brackets is dry, I take some 5mm EVA foam that you can get at any craft store and glue it to the parts that will directly contact the glass. From this point on, it's just a matter of assembly. I start by threading the support braces into the mirror mounts. These screw into just before the end, and once the mounting brackets are installed, the lock nut will be tightened down to secure them in place. The other end gets a bolt and a washer for the mounting bracket to rest against. Next comes the mounting bracket. The top hole accepts the brace and rests against the nut and washer. The bottom is held in place by the existing headlight mounting bolt. My bike has this headlight cover which offers a sturdy base for the bracket to sit against. I'm also taking this opportunity to cut some excess length off the brace. I left them kind of long just because I was eyeballing things. Finally, it's time to remove the plastic film from the windshield. So I did make a couple mistakes while bending this sheet of Lexan. You can see this spot here that I overheated. It doesn't perfectly match the curvature, which we knew already, but I can also see with the protective sheet off that there is just a little bit of bubbling in there. And then also there are some spots where I did melt the imprint of the ratchet strap into the Lexan while bending. So it didn't quite turn out as well as I would have liked. I'll just count those as lessons learned. I can go back in the future and remake this piece out of a new sheet of Lexan if I want to, but for the time being, I do still think this is good enough to do the job.
For the hardware that goes directly against the windshield, both a washer and rubber washer are used to hold it in place. The bottom hole uses a regular M8 bolt. The top hole, which has the brace running through it, gets a cap nut. This is what the finished product looks like fully assembled. I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but you can barely tell this was built in a garage by an idiot. All that's left to do now is to tighten everything up and see if it actually works. From an aerodynamic standpoint, I'm really impressed at how well this works. Obviously, I don't have a wind tunnel, so I was just guessing with the size and angle of the shield, but I ended up with the result I was hoping for. My head and arms are still in the wind, but it takes almost all the wind off my chest. This makes a major difference at what I'll call legal highway speeds. Without a shield, the wind would hit my torso and muscle me around, to the point where it could be difficult to do any highway riding on a windy day. With the screen on, I can still feel the wind, but I don't feel like it's going to blow me off the road. I feel 100 times more stable. The only downside I notice is that I can hear more wind noise in my helmet. This isn't a big issue for me since I ride with earplugs, but I can see how it could be annoying for some people. The thing that impresses me the most, though, is stability. Throughout the entire test ride, it didn't move a millimeter. There's absolutely no flex in the Lexan or movement in the mounting brackets. I've taken this bike up to the legalist highway speeds it will go, and it's just rock solid. My main priority here was making something sturdy, since the last thing you need is parts flying off your bike on the highway, and I'm happy to say that I definitely accomplished that. After it passed the highway trials, I'm satisfied to call this the finished product. It looks good, it works great, it maybe saved us some money, and it was a lot of fun to build. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you're a dumb asshole, don't forget to leave a comment about how I did everything wrong and you could have done it better.